and welcome to Take Time. I am your host, Patrick Marlette, and let's talk about the Avig Thor. This is part 2, our review on the modern dress piece, and I've got a lot of good things to say and just a handful of bad things, and of course I'm going to share your opinions in this part 2 video as well. Now, in case you're new to the channel, I like to do these 2-part reviews here. In the first half, I do an unboxing and first impression, and in the second half, I take any of your questions, comments, and concerns and answer them on the video. And as with all my reviews here on the channel, I like to start with the bad and then move on to the good before giving my final verdict on a review item. So let's begin. Now, from left to right, as you can see, I have lined up our 3 versions of the Thor. I have the stark black to the left, the white linen in the middle, and the lightning blue off to the right. How very appropriate for a watch named after the Norse god of thunder. And a lot of you guys were confused about why these are called Thor. As a matter of fact, I'm a little confused as to why they're called the Thor lineup. It doesn't really seem appropriate for a dress watch, even a modern one with its larger scale, it being 40 millimeters in width. It does feel a little odd on this watch, not quite fitting. For the blue one, at least thematically, the color makes a little bit more sense, but overall, I'm with you guys. The name is a little funny. However, I do love the font choice for the word Thor down at the 6 o'clock position. And while we're looking at the dial, the beautiful white linen dial of our Avig Thor here, I want to touch on one viewer complaint, that being the dial face looking a little cheap on these watches. Now, while I don't necessarily agree with that, I can see where some complaints are coming from. I think the applied indexes are a little simple, and when we turn to our dress watch, we're looking for those smaller features, those more nuanced touches that give life to the watch. And I think the markers here are a little bland. I will agree with you there. I don't think it makes the watch look cheap. I think it might make it look boring depending on the dial face you choose. I think the white linen dial pairs very well with those stick markers. You don't want anything overly complex in the dial. This way you can appreciate that linen effect that much more. On the sunburst effect, I think it looks not as good. And on the stark black dial, I'll say, yeah, it looks a little boring. However, I will definitely not agree in saying it looks cheap. It's one of those things you have to see in person to appreciate. Unfortunately, we all can't have one in our hands, but trust me, the markers do look good in person. They capture light very well. They do a great job of giving you a good sense of what time it is at a glance. And I will say, it wasn't an issue in day-to-day use, but you'll notice that the 3, 6, and 9 also have double batons as well as the 12 o'clock marker. That didn't hamper my ability to read the time on any of these models, just so you guys know. It was something that I honestly overlooked on my first impression, but having it day-to-day, I actually love how those markers match each other. It does add a nice symmetry to the dial. Now, the first bad note I would like to mention is actually about the movement inside this watch. The 8N33 lacks a hacking function. It's somewhat of a luxury we've come to expect from our modern watches, and it's a shame that it's missing here. This is a time-only watch, and you'd hope that it would tell it accurately and to the second, that is. And unfortunately, you can't synchronize this with an atomic clock or any other accurate clock you have in your household because the seconds hand doesn't stop. And yes, there are a few tricks to getting the seconds hand to start on the actual second. I don't want to dilly-dally with that. I just want to be able to hack the watch. It is a function that is sorely missed here. And again, it's a shame because this is a time-only piece. It would have been nice to have hacking on it. Now, another viewer-related complaint is on the dial face again, and it is with the Avig logo. Now, I'm not upset that Chip decided to put his logo at the 12 o'clock position. As a matter of fact, I actually like it, but a lot of you are unpleased with the look of his logo. I believe one viewer stated it looks something similar to a Klingon symbol, and if you're a Star Trek fan, you'll get that. I do see that a little bit. I don't think it's a bad thing per se. Another viewer suggested that it looks like a symbol you'd find on a Chinese vintage Shanghai or Seagull dress watch. And again, the Thor is supposed to be a modern take on a vintage dress watch, so maybe that reference makes sense. I don't think the symbol looks bad, however. I don't think it looks cheap. I certainly don't think it's a bad look for the watch. I think the red does contrast poorly with some of these dial face options as opposed to others. I think it looks fine on the black. I think it looks fine on the white linen. It does look a little off against the lightning blue dial. But again, it's neither here nor there. It's his brand's crest. I don't mind its use of being at the 12 o'clock position, being applied there. As a matter of fact, I think it looks kind of nice. But this is a matter of personal opinion. You may or may not agree with me. But, it doesn't feel like a huge issue, unlike the Christopher Ward text that so many people complain about. I don't see this one being as large an issue. Now, aside from those minor bad notes, I actually had a real pleasant time with this watch. The only difficult part was figuring out which one I wanted to wear on a day-to-day basis. Initially, I thought that the white linen dial would be my favorite, but I kept turning to the lightning blue, and near the end of my time with this watch, I wound up wearing the stark black the most. I think it's because I don't own any black dial face dress watches. That's just not me. I prefer silver or white tone dress watches. That's just my preference for dress watches. So it was nice having a black one in possession, but I also think it's because it just looks good with everything. This color tone, stark black, it's hard not to have it match what you're wearing. Also, it goes under the radar. It's very discreet and it's very elegant at that. So for our part 1 video, I was actually listing off the wholesale price of these watches. Currently on pre-order, if you are outside of Europe, it is $470 stateside. And if you're in Europe, it is going to be right around 479 euros. And in that price range, I think you have quite a compelling offering under $500. This is a really awesome modern dress watch. If you're trying to go for something a little different than the competition, this is definitely the best option among them, at least for me. You can't go wrong with either of them, but I do think that this, again, is the most compelling offering. I'm just showing off that dial to give you a good sense of how this looks, because in day-to-day use, this was such a joy on the wrist. And so far as good notes are concerned, I think legibility is one of the major ones. The contrast between the black minute markers here and the linen dial are perfect, and Chip did a great job of contrasting those minute markers on all these dial face options. You'll see there's a nice stark white against the black dial face here, and that same white is used on the lightning blue dial. It just made reading these in any type of light very easy, whether it were low or broad daylight. It was very easy to distinguish the time, especially because the minute hands on these watches reach the very end of the minute. The hand links are just perfect. There's everything design-wise on the dial face here was very well thought. Let's go close up and I'll show you what I'm talking about. And as you can see, the handset is perfectly balanced for this dial. The hour hand just barely touches the batons, while that minute hand just barely touches the minute track. And we can easily tell that it's about to shift to 32 minutes past the hour in just a second. And you'll notice that that seconds hand just barely overlaps the minute track. I love the execution and design on these dial faces. There are small touches that make it easier in day-to-day life. The case itself, while simple, is highly detailed. The polished sides are gorgeous, as well as that polished bezel, and the brushing is spot on. The back of the case, of course, being a first for the company, is well executed. I think this exhibition case back with the skeletonized movement give you a good glimpse at the heart of your watch. It is very charming to take these in. So for under $500, you'll be receiving the Avig Thor dress watch with the leather strap, a two-piece gray pearl-on strap, as well as a leather pouch to carry 2 watches, as well as that additional strap. Will also come with a spring bar removal tool. I think that bundled with a watch that's made out of high quality stainless steel with sapphire crystal top, as well as this very reliable movement, is a pretty decent deal. Now, before I leave you guys, I would like to provide you all with a wrist shot so you get a good impression of what the Avig Thor will look like on your wrist. And I will say that in day-to-day use, again, I think I enjoyed the black one most because it just, again, paired well with everything, but it was just the easiest to go to. Plus, it was just nice having a black dial watch I can casually wear out. Again, I don't have very many black dialed watches. I'm pretty crazy with my choice of dial face options. I prefer things that are just a little bit more unique than your typical watch, but black was nice to have in the collection for at least a short while. Now here's what the God of Thunder is going to look like on a 7¼ inch wrist for all of your admirers. And when you are going to admire it, it's going to look a little something like this. At 48 millimeters from lug to lug and 40 millimeters in width, this makes for a great day-to-day dress watch. But one step more, I would say this just makes for a great casual timepiece. Something about that scale makes it more practical in day-to-day use, as opposed to, say, a smaller dress watch at 34 to 37 millimeters, 38 being the upper end of most vintage dress watches in scale, and this being just a step larger than that. I think this just wears and looks really good in day-to-day use. Now, just for comparison's sake, I know a lot of you guys don't collect vintage dress pieces like I do. So here on the left-hand side is my Seiko 6216 9000, and this is 37 millimeters in width compared to the Avig's 40 millimeters in width, and you can see the difference in overall scale. But by no means does this lack the charm or class of this smaller dress watch. As a matter of fact, I'd say that a lot of these modern dress watches, even those from Seiko's lineup that are 40 millimeters in width as well, do a better job in day-to-day use because they're just that much more practical. With a bigger dial, it's easier to tell the time. Sometimes I have trouble with these smaller dial face options with their small minute tracks. It's just not as practical, although they are extremely charming and beautiful to look at. This is far more practical in day-to-day use. As a matter of fact, these larger 40 millimeter dress watches are starting to wear on me, pun intended. I think that the 40 millimeter dress watch has a place in your collection. I think the modern sizing of these pieces isn't without just cause. And so far as a final verdict is concerned on the Thor, I think it's great value for money, especially at the pre-order rate at under $500. Sooner the better, honestly, on these timepieces. I believe they're expected to deliver in September. So if you were interested, now would be a good time to look at the website. Of course, I'll leave a link in the description, but if you're interested in getting a modern size dress watch, this is a very classy, elegant range of timepieces from Avig that are worth checking out. If you found this video enlightening or in the least entertaining, feel free to hit that like button. It looks a little something like this guy. If you have friends, forums, or groups that are interested in picking up a modern dress watch from a micro brand that is on the rise, well, maybe share this video with them so they can have a better sense of what Avig has to offer. And if you're new to the channel, well, welcome. I do videos like this twice a week, everything from sketches to reviews to discussions, all across the board. And of course, I am opening up into different genres and evolving the show as we go along. So if you want to be a part of that ride, feel free to hit the subscribe button. And if you'd like to see when my videos come out precisely when they come out, you can hit the bell icon next to that and you will be alerted. Again, my name is Patrick Marlett, and thank you for the time.